Hey everyone, Anark here, and this is another Anark live stream. I appreciate y'all showing up, and as usual, I assume right now who I'm mostly talking to is people watching this live stream after it is live, as few people are going to have shown up this early in the live stream, but I welcome any of you who are here and are listening right now. I suppose I will start as I usually do, just giving a channel update. The last part of A Modern Anarchism, titled Organization, has been released. That's A Modern Anarchism Part 4, Organization. Any of you who have never seen one of my video essays, which I assume is actually a substantial portion of you, you should go over and watch the A Modern Anarchism series. So many of the questions that I get either in live streams or on comments to my videos can be answered by one or another part of A Modern Anarchism. It was really intended in a very real way to be a comprehensive overview of both a historical anarchism, I suppose not, but more of a modern synthesis of anarchism that I think is faithful to the historic manifestations and especially a more social anarchist orientation. So if that interests you, I think that that book is a really good book to study for a strong anarchist foundation to understanding the world, or really just a libertarian socialist foundation understanding the world. So hopefully that is valuable to quite a few of my viewers. At the moment, the video hasn't really gotten a lot of views, which to be fair is kind of exactly what I expected. Video essays don't do as well these days as they used to, but for any of those of you who do want to watch a long video essay, there are 4 long video essays in that series. So, yeah, no, I mean, you know, put it on while you're cooking or while you're driving or whatever and absorb it passively. That is one thing that I wanted to note. The other thing I wanted to note is that patrons are sort of leveling off, and that's fine and everything, but I am, like everybody else, sort of bracing for impact as the economy gets worse. So if you are somebody who does have money to spare, I would appreciate anybody who went over and become a patron at my Patreon, which is patreon.com. That's one way you can support me. You can support me as well through super chats, of course, here in the live chat. That is one really big way you can support me, obviously. You can also support me by becoming a sort of YouTube patron, which is just becoming a member. You can find that dialogue down below. And also you can go over and subscribe to Means TV. So Means TV is essentially a socialist Netflix, and you can find me there as well as like Richard Wolff and Prince Shakur. And yeah, no, it's a good way to support me. Use my discount code, which is just Anark, ANARK, and that will get you a discount. And if you do the yearly one, you'll get an even steeper discount, as one might expect, I suppose. Those are the major things that I wanted to note. That is, I think, the big channel. The last thing I would say on the channel update, and that is that, you know, when I first started doing this channel, there was an enormous number of people doing introductory content. What are you doing, Murray? Hey, don't chew on the bug. There was an enormous number of people doing introductory content, and I decided what I wanted to do was deeper dives. You know, and that's, what the, stop it. Stop that. Don't claw at the bugs. I wanted to do deeper dives, and that was just because I thought that that was needed, as well as something that I was good at. Why is he trying to destroy my setup? Please stop that. Stop that. Here. Don't do that. However, these days it seems like almost everybody doing introductory stuff has fallen off. Either they have moved on to doing other kinds of content, or they, you know, a lot of their content, for example, Lucky Black Cat is really not, Look at him. Can you see him in the background? I can't even speak a sentence without him trying to destroy something. Anyway, Lucky Black Cat is doing a huge variety of material. She's doing stuff that's introductory, intermediate, even stuff that's advanced. But her channel isn't maybe growing as fast as it should. So given that my channel has at least a decent viewership, I do feel like I have some responsibility to start making more introductory content. That's something that I don't think I get an enormous amount of enjoyment out of, but I am not only doing this channel for enjoyment, I'm doing it out of a feeling of necessity to bring about revolutionary change. And, when I first started creating this, I thought that it was probably valuable for people to go beyond introductory stuff and begin consuming more in-depth things. However, it seems like the pipeline is not as coherent. It is not as active as it once was. And barely anybody is doing introductory primers at this point. That means that I need to create videos on like, what is class? What is class conflict? Introduce people to labor exploitation. Teach people about white supremacy, that white supremacy exists. That patriarchy exists. I think a lot of people are doing trans education right now. So maybe I don't have to do a whole lot of material on that front. I think a lot of people are doing anti-imperialist stuff. So maybe that wouldn't be necessarily the focus, but I noticed that people aren't doing the first two that I named. People are not doing any class analysis, and people are really not doing any work on white supremacy. So that might be stuff that I need to pivot towards a little bit. That's something I'm thinking about doing. That is to say, more introductory content, stuff that's at the beginning of the pipeline rather than more advanced stuff. That being said, it's not as if I'm going to stop writing my video essays. I'm going to continue writing the video essays and producing them. And I actually have a bunch of them currently in process. One is on fascism and its relation to imperialism and the imperial boomerang. One of them is on, I guess what you might call the hyper-real simulacra, and the way that the internet has become something that is more real than the real, at least people's perception that it is, whether they're aware of it or not, and how that captures them and makes them less effective at effecting change, as well as absorbing a complex ideology. That's another one of them. And for a while now, I've actually been brewing a video on healthy masculinity, which is not meant to be like a full-length essay, but is just meant to be kind of a short piece. But I keep not releasing it because I am dreading the sort of shallow takes that people might have in even trying to envision a healthy masculinity. But yeah, those are the big ones that come to mind. Also, I've been writing one that might just be a good primer for people, which has been in process for a very long time at this point. Also, I've been creating one about the self, the concept of the self. Weirdly, it looks like I'm getting really bad video rate here. Let's see. I'm going to close off some stuff, I guess. I'll just close off a bunch of these windows. I wonder if this is helping. Wow, I'm still getting a very bad bit rate. I wonder what that's about. Is anything running that would make it that way? Well, it's fine coming through the wire because on my end it's the bit rate, the internet connection. That's really weird. Nothing is downloading. I wonder why that's happening. What's wrong with the bit rate here? I actually don't know how to fix that right now. Yeah, not sure how to fix that. Get rid of this. Close off a bunch of stuff. I closed off a bunch of stuff, still not working. Now it says it's good. Okay, maybe closing off all that stuff actually was helpful. Let's see here. Cool. Okay, I hope that fixed it. I think it did. Couldn't tell which of those things was the problem. Oh, yeah. The last one is one about the self, the concept of the self. So I think that, that one's interesting because I have to develop a further theory of the self, which is to say, what do I even believe that the individual is by themselves? Oh, no, we're getting lag again. I guess I'm just going to keep talking because I don't know how to fix this any further than I already have. Yeah, the idea of basically like, what is the individual? What is the self? What is the, what is the concept of oneself, one's personality, and so on. And, that one's interesting because, of course, there's this aspect where nobody is just who they are by itself. Everybody is who they are in mediation with everything else. But yeah, so those are the videos that are sort of that are brewing right now. But now I'm very distracted with the fact that for some reason my internet, I have to say it has to be my internet. I mean, very weird. I guess I'll start closing things off on my phone. Make sure my phone is disconnected. Okay, phone is disconnected now. Wow, that's pretty annoying. Oh, the audio is lagging as well? I thought just the video was lagging. Well, I hope it's just the video. Okay, the audio's good. Okay, well, that's what I was hoping. Yeah, I mean, the video, it has to be a problem with the internet connection, but I don't know what I could possibly do about that. I mean, anything I could do, I've already tried to do, which is to say I've closed off a bunch of things that might be sucking up bandwidth. Yeah, I'm just closing things off like crazy now. Yeah, I'm just trying to find anything I can close off, self out. What the heck? What is going on? Weird. Okay, I think it's going to get better here in a second. On my side, it shows it's getting better. The video's better? Yay, I think it's going to get better. Okay, nice. I think we're in a better place now. Now, what's so weird, it's telling me that I have a 0 bit rate, that nothing is going through. Okay, there we go. Now it seems like it's fixed. All right. Well, anyway, yeah, how's everybody doing today? I look a little sick. Well, I don't feel sick. I am wearing different glasses. Also, perhaps it's this more pale tinted shirt that's making my natural pallor look even paler than it generally is. Steve and Bill did not show up again, or at least I haven't seen them if they have shown up again. Kristen Supine says, also, I wanted to say I finally watched, wow, it's lagging again. I finally watched your video about leftist responsibility. It hurt, admittedly, but I, for one, needed to hear it. So thank you for that. Well, I'm glad to hear that. You know, I think a lot of people probably need to hear that, but I don't know if a lot of people are ready to hear that. Yeah, the cats. Let's see here. Can you see? You can see them both in the background. The babies. The babies. The babies. The Dawn of Everything is a good book. I would highly recommend you read it. I look like I'm sunburned. I mean, I might have a little bit of a sunburn. You know, I'm working outdoors all the time. Maybe it's just this lighting. Ooh, now I look even more pale. That one, that's interesting. Boom, there we go. The cats don't like that. They both looked at me, or rather just Murray. All right. Anyway, yeah, no, I probably won't be able to go for super long today. Yeah, no, I mean, I just thought I would pop on because usually I do it on the first Friday of every month. However, the first Friday of this month, I release the last part of A Modern Anarchism. But yeah, no, so here it is. This is my makeup stream. Oh, I forgot to even share this link anywhere. That's funny. I should probably do that. I should probably tell people that this is even happening. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. Mike working for Green says, "Hey Dan, are there any noteworthy? I assume that's what you're saying. Are there any noteworthy non-anarchist thinkers who affected your thinking?" Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the chief among them is Marx. Marx was very formative for me when I was first becoming radicalized. And I think that's true for a lot of people, to be honest. I think a lot of people learn the basics through Marx. And I still recommend that most people learn the basics through Marx. I think that he has an extremely valuable analysis. I think his analysis of class was incredibly influential. And I think he was a brilliant thinker and a brilliant writer. I think that's one of them for sure. Who else comes to mind? You know, I was influenced by a lot of physics. I think that can't really go without saying. You know, physics is a hard one, though, because I can't just say that, like, there's a specific physicist who really, like, influenced my thinking, because physics is a field, you know, where lots of people contribute, and their contributions are hard to disentangle, of course. But no, absolutely, I was highly, highly influenced by science in a general sense. So a lot of scientists have changed the way I think about the world by giving me an understanding of the world that is based in the scientific method, that is based in an understanding of the demonstration of physical facts, that is grounded really very strictly in the observation of physical facts. I think that's a big one. But also some of the, some of the classical scientific skeptics, like Carl Sagan was definitely very, very influential for me. I got a lot from Carl Sagan. I think he gave me a sort of humanistic outlook, which I have found very valuable in understanding the world, and which I think we need more of. And that's one of the reasons why I also value Bookchin a great deal, even though I would still consider him to be mostly an anarchist. he also recognized that humanism was a very pro-social phenomena, and that the way humanism had been portrayed by a lot of people was an unfair characterization. So I think humanism is generally a very pro-social phenomena. Those are the people that kind of like immediately come to mind. But, you know, I've been influenced by a lot of people. I've been influenced by a lot of philosophers. I was very influenced by David Hume as well. Very influenced by Nietzsche and Camus, although Camus kind of ostensibly was an anarcho-syndicalist, but the existentialists more generally. I will respond to that chat here in a moment, however. Just give me just a moment. Yeah, one could argue Bookchin, as you said, Sai, but I think Bookchin really remained an anarchist for his entire life, except I think his end stage where he began advocating for even a sort of local electoralism. I think that is the furthest he ever strayed from anarchism. I think that was the biggest divergence that he really ever had. I think most of Bookchin's critiques of anarchism were critiques of individualist anarchism. But yeah, no, so lots of people were very influential for me. I was very influenced by the existentialists. I was very influenced by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Especially maybe when I was about 13, 14 years old. I think finding Buddhism was very, very valuable for me. I wouldn't consider myself a Buddhist, but I still consider myself very interested in Buddhism. I still think Buddhism has an enormous amount of wisdom within it. You know, the list goes on and on. I lived a sort of synthesist upbringing before I was an anarchist, and I would say to a strong degree I still do combine the ideas of many different people. Today, of course, I have strong influences from people like Stafford Beer. Stafford Beer, I think, made a very strong impact on me, insofar as that I agreed with most of what he was saying to begin with, but then he taught me something. Sometimes I will wade into a certain thinker because I'm like, oh, me and this person like largely agree. Let's see what they think. And then I read them and I'm like, oh, well, you know, that wasn't anything. You didn't really you bring anything new to the table. In fact, I almost feel like I have a more developed conception. That was not the case with Stafford Beer. Stafford Beer was rightly understood as an expert on his subject, and I had a lot to learn from him, as anybody can see from part 5 of A Modern Anarchism. So, somebody says I'm breaking up. I mean, I hope that's not the case. Let's see. So non-anarchists, you know, I'm trying to think of non-anarchists. A lot of philosophers were very influential for me. I think that, you know, I was very influenced. Part 5, there will be no part 5. Cy Marie. Okay, so I'm going to do this in order. Long Defiant became a backer. So sorry, not a donation. I was looking out of the corner of my eye here. He says, thanks for all your hard work on A Modern Anarchism. It's an inspiration. I hope it's successful in getting people out into their communities. I do too. I hope that book is influential. We'll have to see, of course. I think the videos have been semi-influential. I'd like to see more people give their feedback on it, you know, dig into them. They certainly have, I believe, enough depth that they can be sort of focused on by study groups and stuff. And I hope they give people an understanding of how to engage in the world, how to alter the world, what a coherent revolutionary philosophy looks like while also being horizontalist. But yeah, we'll see what happens, I guess. But as Cy Maurice says, so final thoughts on full spectrum resistance. So full spectrum resistance is, I think that it is, I agree with like a strong 98% of it. And I only say 98% because I think after I've meditated on it for a little while, I have a few criticisms, and even upon first reading, I had one or two. But that I just want to preface with the coming criticisms with the fact that I still think everybody should read Full Spectrum Resistance. Full Spectrum Resistance is probably the best book you can read on praxis right now. And I include my own work in that list, that he is better than my own work if you want to understand the generalized praxis that we should be doing right now. Really how to approach many different problems, and how to do all kinds of different organizing. It gives a really comprehensive framework for understanding that, and for helping a lot of people who probably don't have an understanding of how to get into organizing, or even just how to protest, how to do activism in a general sense. It gives a great framework to people for that concept. My first criticism upon reading it was there is a section where he lays out what he considers the, these sort of, I think he calls them the dichotomies of an organization or something like that. And even though I understand what he's trying to say with most of them, I think he really falls short on two of them. And I'm actually going to take a moment to bring it up, and then I'll show people what I'm talking about on stream. Right, found it. Give me a second. I'll get it pulled up on screen. Right. So he lays out this part right here, and Sai is correct. He calls these organizational tensions. So he basically says that there are these dichotomies. There's 7 of these that he lays out, and you can kind of see them on screen. And they are small versus big, centralized versus decentralized, formal versus informal, consensus versus hierarchy, clandestine versus open, moderate versus militant, and anything goes versus code of conduct. So I think that he's like onto something here, insofar as that he's kind of recognizing that there are these things. Organizations can't be everything at once. They have to choose between different kinds of forms and structures. And so, for example, you can't be small and big at the same time. You can't be centralized and decentralized at the same time, formal versus informal, etc. I think he's fine on making that observation, and I like that he's trying to build a coherent structure and codify his understandings of how organizations are structured. And I think these are, for the most part, pretty good analyses. But I really want to focus on the two called centralized versus decentralized, and consensus versus hierarchy. I have a lot of problems with the way he presents these. First of all, it is not clear to me how something can be centralized but consensus. Like, I think that that's a problem. Or how it can be hierarchical but decentralized. And it seems to me that if something can't be one of these, but not the other ones, then you don't really have like two separate categories that you've really separated out here. I don't think he seems to give a very good understanding of what the difference between centralization and hierarchy is. And I also think that the fourth one, or rather consensus versus hierarchy, is just not a very good dichotomy. I don't understand what's happening with this dichotomy and why he counterposes hierarchy to like consensus rather than horizontality. It's very unusual to me how he seems to think that horizontality, or the opposite of hierarchy, is just consensus. And this is very, very odd, because consensus is a decision-making system. Consensus is not a structure of a group. Groups can be structured in all kinds of different ways and use consensus. it's weird because in the section, I don't think he does a very good job clarifying it. It's odd to me because it seems like he thinks that if there is any sort of structural delegation of tasks, that is hierarchy. But that doesn't really seem to take into account how consensus can delegate people. Consensus and delegation are perfectly fine to have along with one another. In fact, the vast majority of groups that use consensus also do delegation. So that is a very odd analysis on his part. I think it might have something to do with him being very present in some of these more historical movements, like the environmental movement, where they really did do very little delegation and they really did see like consensus as being perfectly horizontal. I don't think horizontality requires that everybody agree to every single action that is done. And I don't even think that these full consensus groups, as he conceives them, do that either. I think that people make decisions, then they carry them out, and they make variations as is needed. No, this dichotomy of consensus versus hierarchy really just doesn't make much sense. Now, I want to caveat for anybody watching that that hasn't read, this really does not affect much else in the book. This is just one section of the book where he essentially presents what he considers are these tensions in organizations, and that, people are going to have to choose between these in order to, you have to choose between them because you just cannot have both at the same time. And this section's still very good. But this is really the section I disagreed with most of the entire book. I think here it's clear that he has not read much like anarchist theory. It doesn't seem like he has a very good understanding of a more social anarchist position, or more generally a sort of libertarian socialist position. I don't think that he has a very good understanding of that. I think probably what he thinks is a more anarchist position is probably a more individualist, anti-organizationalist anarchism, which he was probably familiar with from the environmental movement, which it sounds like he had a lot of experience in the environmental movement. And we're talking about the environmental movement of mostly like the 90s and early 2000s, as I understand it. So I think that might have influenced how some of this goes. He also kind of makes some statements that he seems to think that consensus is more informal. But yeah, no, I don't think this section's very good. That would be my critique. I don't think he does a very good job on this section. And, I was waiting for this section, kind of knowing it was here when I started reading and hoping that when I got here, he was going to clarify it for me. But I don't think he does a very good job clarifying it. It remains sort of confusing to me. Other than that, I just want to say that it is a phenomenal book. So I don't want to do this thing that I see people do all the time on the internet where they critique something and all they provide is like a critique, and they give people, what people do is they go around just repeating the critique without ever reading the book or without ever even presenting the upsides. I want to be clear that, what I originally said was I agree with 98% of the book. So what I just said is like 2% of my opinion on the book, right? That is my criticism of the book. But the book itself broadly is indispensable. I think everybody who is in the movement should read it. Even people who are experienced organizers should read Full Spectrum Resistance, because it also talks about a lot of the mistakes that organizers in the movement are currently making and have made historically. And I see a lot of people who would consider themselves experienced organizers making a lot of the mistakes that are in the book all the time, to be honest. The other thing I was going to say is that I don't think he provides a very revolutionary analysis in this book. I don't think that, and that's not to say that I don't think what he's done here is revolutionary in the conventional sense. Like it is actually, because it's above and beyond any other praxis guide you're ever probably going to find. What I mean to say is that I don't think he lays out here how revolutions take place. He seems to have a sort of the conception that I've seen a lot of people have, which is that all you have to do is organize successfully, and then a revolution is a coup. He doesn't seem to have a very sophisticated understanding of the prefigurative approach. And I could be wrong. I mean, he says that he is involved in the creation of cooperatives, and he himself tries to, work on community gardens, and he tries to create prefigurative and dual power structures. So, and he even considers these to be like, aggressive or militant in their orientation. So he clearly does have some conception of that, but it seems to me like he seems to believe that the revolutionary coup is what makes the successful revolution, and that all you do is you just organize, and then you have a revolutionary coup. I don't think that that's true. I think that, organizing is about getting people together to do dual power and to engage in direct action. And it's not to say that I don't think he agrees with that in a general sense. It's that I don't think that he lays out how those all synergize together in order to do the movement. It's instead that he's doing an analysis of one aspect here, and then another aspect here, and another aspect here, and another aspect here. And he gives you crossovers from time to time, but he doesn't give you a broader schema of how the revolution takes place. This book to me seems more about how to organize within the current conditions, not about how to revolutionize your conditions. And that's fine. The book doesn't have to do everything, but that's something that I would have people recognize. I do think, however, the skills that are contained in full spectrum resistance, these are going to be necessary skills to do a revolution anyway, right? I think that you're going to need to have these skills to carry out a revolution. So that this critique is still not enough that you shouldn't read it. You should absolutely read it. You should read it alongside also more revolutionary literature that does perhaps give you a better understanding of what that revolutionary transition might look like. So, I think that's my thoughts on full spectrum resistance at the moment. Oh, yeah. I have to switch back over. Ta-da! I switched back over. What did Sai say in response? Let's see here. I agree with your critique. I guess it's about one person having to make a decision as opposed to the whole group. And I think his example for decentralized but hierarchical was the Deacons for Defense, where locals had a lot of autonomy, but were typically sort of top down. Yeah, okay. I guess I understand that. Anyway, but yeah, people should absolutely read it. Somebody says, thoughts on post-anarchism, not post-left, just post. Well, my understanding is that post-anarchism is essentially postmodern anarchism. And I am not a huge fan of postmodernism. I think that there were some valuable aspects of postmodernism, and I cite postmodernist thinkers in my work when I think that their insights are valuable. I mean, I was just saying earlier that I'm writing an essay which will heavily lean on Baudrillard, but I am very unenthused with postmodernism as a broad philosophical school. I think that it made enormous mistakes in trying to undermine the focus on rationality or logos. I think that it muddied the water in a very harmful way about what truth is, and sort of confused people, making them think that subjectivity was what determined truth, and trying to essentially make it to where people shouldn't have confidence in mechanisms of knowledge accumulation, because those mechanisms of knowledge accumulation are embedded in power structures, and sort of giving people this idea that they should doubt every form of expert instead of trying better to understand the underlying mechanisms by which knowledge is attained. And I think that last one, mostly Foucault, can be blamed for that. and probably Derrida can be blamed for the one where we are degrading our understanding of what truth is. I think that... Oh, I posted the wrong link. Oh, I sure did. That's so funny. I'm glad somebody pointed that out. I posted the wrong link. Give me a sec. I have to go do something really quick. I just autopiloted. There we go. Yeah, I am not a big fan of postmodernism in a general sense. It's not to say I don't think it made some valuable critiques. It absolutely did make some valuable critiques. I agree that, science is not a singular authoritative arbiter of the truth. It is not as if, when you read the science, you are reading the capital T truth. What you are reading is essentially the accumulation of knowledge, the best accumulation of knowledge that we have achieved so far. And, a lot of people will try to point out that this comes from specific subjectivities. Well, I think that matters more and less depending on the field of science. I think that subjectivity matters a lot when we're talking about psychology or sociology, but subjectivity doesn't matter really at all if we're talking about physics or even chemistry, to be honest. I think that generalization that we see with people constantly trying to cast doubt on the results of the sciences because of the sort of, what should I say? It's not a lack of rigor in the soft sciences. It's instead that they have limitations. They have simply put, they have limitations in their ability to measure and assess phenomena. And that's not any fault of the scholars themselves. That's just the fact that it's very hard to run experiments on people and not find out just something that is specific to the people that you are measuring. It's hard to find generalizable facts by doing measurements on people. And the larger the groups of people, then the worse off it's going to be, right? Like sociology is valuable. And I would say that some of my work really belongs in that category of philosophy and sociology. But I think that sociology at the end of the day is a very sophisticated form of philosophy, which utilizes statistics to try to test its hypotheses. So I think it certainly has a very scientific bent to it. But that being said, I do think that these critiques of the subjectivity of the scientists and the power structure that they are embedded in, I think that does have a strong foundation when it comes to sociology, psychology, psychiatry, for example. I think that those things certainly are things that we can doubt. Those are things that we can question. We can ask ourselves how much of those are completely contingent upon societal subjectivity. But I think that this has gone a little bit too far in that people now try to find ways to doubt logic. They try to find ways to doubt the scientific method, ways to doubt physics, ways to doubt mathematics, ways to, everybody's trying to subjectivize these, but you can't. It's not going to work. You're not going to be able to subjectivize logic or subjectivize physics or chemistry because these are based very, very strictly upon universal principles. And that is a good thing, not a bad thing. I think that it's good that we have spent a lot of time on subjectivity. It's very good that we've spent a lot of time on people's standpoints and how the standpoints reconstitute people's views of the world. That's great. But that is not by itself transformative. Neither, might I add, is just universalizing principles. Universalizing principles are also not by themselves enough for total transformation. You have to have both. So this is why I call myself a metamodernist, because I think that postmodernism was obsessive about subjectivity. And it was obsessive about people's standpoints and I guess you might say like a standpoint epistemology. I think that only standpoints, only subjectivity is a dead end. If people do not have an understanding of science and they don't understand how things work in the world and they don't have a grasp of logic, then they are going to be bamboozled by all kinds of falsehoods, all kinds of fantastical ideas. And that is not good. In fact, I think that the rise of fascism to a very large degree was enabled by postmodernism. I think postmodernism enabled the modern resurgence of fascism because it gave people a very poor foundation by which to debunk and dismantle fascist conceptions of the world. So what you have now is you have fascists pretending that they are the ones that are rational. They are the ones that are objective. They're the ones that are based in science, and they're all over here obsessing about their race science beliefs. And you have a left that it can't even cite scientific concepts, can't even, address the fallacies that they're bringing about, can't even point out the irrational basis of what they're saying, because the left is obsessed with subjectivity, is obsessed with individual conception. And I think postmodernism is very much to blame for this. So, and also, what is postmodernism? What is it? What are its tenets? Postmodernism, as I've said before, and I'll just kind of repeat, postmodernism was a philosophical school which arose as a response to, I guess what you might call modernism. And modernism was essentially this accumulation of ideas that had resulted from the Enlightenment. So this is, all these sort of rationalist thinkers. The list would go on. We'd have Locke and Hume and Descartes and Kant, and it's a big list. But you have all these thinkers. These thinkers are very focused on trying to create these sort of objective, universalizing structures. And these were to understand everything, the world, ethics, individuals, freedom, everything you could think of. And postmodernism was a response to this. Postmodernism, I think, was a pivot to the subjective. It was a questioning of universal truth narratives. It was a questioning of universal methodologies. It was a questioning of, and this is what is often used as the definition, but I think it's not really enough. It is the questioning of all meta narratives. These overarching narratives of all the world. It is essentially a rejection of any of these meta narratives, which, in my opinion, is contradictory. That is itself a sort of meta narrative. And I don't think you can escape meta-narratives, and it also doesn't make sense. Like, physics exists, so there's a meta-narrative. Physics is the meta-narrative of the universe, and everything else is just layers up from that. I think that there's a variety of meta-narratives that actually do apply to all scales of history. Power structures and analysis of power structures, that is a meta-narrative that functions in all stages of history. I just think that if that is what postmodernism is, which all the listed things I just gave, I think that it way overcorrected on that front. So post-anarchism, no, I don't think I would like that very much. And the post-anarchist writings that I've read have seemed to me very navel-gazy, snobby, contrarian, disconnected from the world. It seems like they're self-defeating. They don't have a praxis. All they do is criticize, and they have nothing to produce on their own. That's another characteristic of postmodernism, I think. Modernism sought closure to every question. So it brought up a question, and then it sought closure to that question. So it wanted to answer that question. By contrast, I think postmodernism is based in problematizing. So that is to say, it takes a narrative or a previous question, and then it seeks to dismantle or deconstruct it as to understand its underlying functions. And then as it understands its underlying concepts, it seeks to demonstrate how those underlying concepts produce contradictions. And so that is its mode. Its mode is taking answers, deconstructing them, whereas the modernist method more appropriately would have been saying taking conundrums and finding answers. The thing is that the human experience and what makes humans powerful is that we do both. It is that we essentially we problematize and we find issues with previous structures, but then we seek closure. Then we attempt to, again, taking the flaws that we currently have, the things we've discovered, we use those in order to determine more universalized structures again, understanding where we went wrong the first time. That is, in my opinion, metamodernism. I think that is what it produces, what it provides in this picture. So, oh God, is he back there just doing? Oh no! Oh my God! Stop it! Why are you doing that? He's ridiculous. He's ridiculous. He just wants me to stop talking, I think. Anyway, yeah. Okay. So yeah, that is post-anarchism. Therefore, anarchism heavily associated with postmodernism is not very valuable to me. I think that it is the same way that we could have critiques of a classical anarchism as being too much focused on a sort of rationalist history that it came from, of a sort of Enlightenment thought, just like all of the theory at that time. This goes the opposite way too far. So there has to be both. There should be a deconstruction and a reconstruction. And if there's not, you will not build a coherent ideology, in my opinion. So there you go. That's my opinion. Somebody, or Perspectiva says, post-anarchism rejects means and ends. We believe in means, no set ends. We would disagree on organization most likely, but I agree the scientific method is important. I do not reject logic. Rejects means and ends. Wow. I got to be honest. I don't know if that is anarchism. Yeah, I don't know if rejecting ends. What? How? Okay. Here's the thing about means ends unity. You don't really get to escape it. So if you have means, then you have ends, because your means are determined by what you're trying to achieve. So you could tell me, my means are solidarity. My means are horizontality. And then I were to ask, or if I were to ask, okay, so what are your ends? Saying I don't have any ends is not an answer to the question. You do. In fact, I could tell you your ends. Your ends are to create a society of horizontality and solidarity, because your means, if perpetuated, would produce that society. That is means ends unity. And vice versa. If somebody were to state their ends, that would naturally dictate the sort of means that they have to use in order to achieve them. There's no escaping means ends unity. It's not a thing we like believe to adhere to. It is a fact about how human actions function, really about how any actions function. If you have any conception of how the future works, if you have intentions, then means ends unity will arise. And when there are mismatches between means and ends, you just don't get the things you're trying to achieve. So rejecting means ends unity to me is incoherent. And I think it comes back to the postmodern rejection of the universalizing narrative, the postmodern rejection of having like coherent rationality. And I think that's clearly what's taking place here. Like, you cannot actually reject ends. That doesn't make any sense. For example, if I were to tell you, your actions, the actions you've chosen, these are going to produce fascism. And I were able to guarantee that to you, that what you are choosing will produce fascism. You would, if you don't want fascism, you would object to your means, because now your means, will produce fascism. So if I were to tell you that, and you were to say, my means will produce fascism, and accept that fact, then you would be accepting that your means are attached with your ends, and therefore you would agree with means ends unity. You can't do what you've said. You can't believe in means but with no set ends. That's not possible. Or if it is, it's irrational. It's illogical. That can't work. So yeah, if that's what post-anarchism says, I have another reason why I don't like it now. Zal says, I feel like too many anarchists today reject or de-emphasize the theorists of classical anarchism, and because of that, tend to reject some basic, uncontroversial tenets of anarchism. Absolutely agreed. There's this thing where it seems like everybody now considers it like passé to read Bakunin or Kropotkin or Rocker or any of the classical anarchists. But they still had a very valuable analysis. A lot of people have moved on because they had a more class analysis. Their analysis was much more focused on like capitalism and the state. And so then as anarchism developed, it felt like it didn't need to make as much commentary on the state and capitalism, and could now make commentary on all kinds of other subjects. But what has happened now is that our literature now lacks as much commentary on those two things, on capitalism and the state. So those thinkers are still incredibly valuable and important, and people still need to read those thinkers. In fact, I'm starting to think people need to read them more now because people are starting to have more incoherent ideas. They're starting to have ideas that are more and more, I guess you might say, idealist. And I don't think that that's going to work out. That's not going to produce a movement that has any power. Yeah. Kumletsov says, funny how experts of quote-unquote real sciences always mention that theories need to be continually verified, while softer sciences are so confident in the truth of their claims. Yeah, I think there's a big reason to that, and that is because there are stronger ideological commitments within the softer sciences. So people start with an ideological commitment, and then they conduct experiments in order to hopefully prove their ideological commitments. Whereas in the sciences, they are basically just trying to interrogate the theory that has already been discovered, because the theory itself is so strong that it stands on its own. You can't go into particle physics and be like, oh yeah, the standard model is just full of shit. It's obviously not. I mean, it works too well to be full of shit. So the whole game then is about trying to create things that work as well as the standard model of particle physics, or trying to make edits to the standard model, or trying to inspect and probe certain aspects of the standard model. Whereas in sociology, for example, there is not a single well-unified theory that everybody can agree on, because that would then start to preclude people's ideology coming before the facts, if that did exist. And that's sort of the problem. I think that's the issue. They essentially are in a situation where it's very difficult to make rigorous measurements of a bunch of things within their field, of entire societies, or even of individuals, to be honest, in their psychologies. And so what you get in place of that is philosophy. You essentially get them philosophizing about their theory of mind, philosophizing about their theory of society. And they have competing meta-narratives, none of which can be scrutinized with the same level of detail as, say, physics or chemistry. Got a $10 donation from Crimson King. He says, hey, Anark, my thanks to you and your channel's work. It's got me started into learning about anarchism and non-authoritarian leftism in general, and I appreciate that. I still have lots to learn. Well, I appreciate the donation, and I'm glad that my work has pushed you in that direction. That's very much the purpose of the channel, so I'm always happy to get messages like this. Ismavolt says, do you have any hobbies to work out your mind, like chess or Sudokus or learning something or that kind of thing? Yeah, no, I mean, I play Magic the Gathering with my friends every single week, sometimes multiple times a week. We play a lot of Commander these days. And I really enjoy it. I love Magic, actually. I got into it because of Magic Arena, but now me and my friends, we all play paper, or we play with proxies, I should say. In fact, if you're ever thinking about getting into Magic and you feel like you can't afford to get into Magic, just print cards. Print cards. Use like really cheap cards that you can just get anywhere for like a cent or something as card backs, and then just put the paper on the card back in a sleeve, and you have something that basically looks like a real card, and just play Magic. It's fun. Has a dog whistle in their name. I can't read the person's entire name. What's the person's in Crimson King 80? Well, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, no, Magic, that's definitely something I do. I play tabletop games. Rather, I've been developing a tabletop game ever since I was like 15 years old called Nira. It's a dark fantasy role-playing game. And yeah, it's very, very developed at this point. Let's see here. I'll even link people to it. Here is a link to the guide. It's being hosted on, I don't remember what this is called. It's like Bookstack or something. But yeah. So if anybody wants to play my tabletop game, there it is. There's the whole tabletop game. Let's see. Perspective, who was talking earlier about post-anarchism, said, I am a post-anarchist, but funny enough, your series on the state converted me from ML. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I think you're better off as a post-anarchist than a Marxist-Leninist. But yeah, I hope you kind of think about some of those critiques that I made there. I think that's my position on that at the moment. Let's see here. Knowledge and defense. I don't know what that is. I've heard of Kollontai, but I've never read any Kollontai. Klitari says, stream idea, Anark playing a TTRPG. We've actually been talking about how maybe here in a few months, we might start streaming our tabletop games of Nira. Not through Anark. I would probably make another YouTube channel for that, but I might kind of start pushing y'all a little bit, if you like tabletop games, to start subscribing to that other channel so I could promote the tabletop game, and maybe, if I'm lucky, I could start getting funders to publish physical copies of the rule book. Somebody said, are you a Cranko mob boss enjoyer? No, I'm really not a red player. I've never liked rush decks very much. I am very much a Golgari player. I love green-black. I love graveyard fuckery. I really like decks that are just do jank. You know, I'm definitely a Timmy. I love big creatures. I love playing big creatures and big cards. But yeah, not much of a rush player. Never enjoyed that very much, because, the thing about a rush deck is that I don't want the game to end quickly. That's not why I'm here. I like my games going on for a long time. I'm here to play Magic, not to just win in 5 minutes. I want the games to go on for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. That's fun to me, is that we all get big developed boards and have to make complex decisions and make really hard, decisions and stuff. But, yeah, so, the rushdown strategy. Also, rushdown red is just really not very good in Commander. I mean, Krenko's pretty decent, but like, rushdown usually doesn't work in Commander, because red is built to DPS down or deeps down or damage one player quickly and win. But now you have to kill 3 players. You can't do triple the damage very easy. So things get kind of sketch for mono red in Commander for sure. Let's see here. Sai says, thoughts on the DSA convention discourse and on the likely future of socialist organization in the next 5 years, especially for LibSocs. Well, it sure seems like DSA is in a period of growth. Even if they're not in a period of actual member growth, I think that they are in a period where they are solidifying their platform and they are starting to unify their process. I think that people that are reporting from the convention, the DSA convention, they appear to be optimistic about the future of the organization. They seem to be pretty happy about the decisions that were made there. And that probably means the DSA is about to gain some power. The DSA is also associated with a lot of electoral successes, especially there in New York City. And I suspect the DSA will actually become more of a player in our electoral politics across the nation as we continue through the Trump era. That's to say, of course, if the government doesn't go absolutely full fascist and ban DSA or ban the Democrats or something. But insofar as that they are still actual, DSA chapters and they are allowed to run candidates and their candidates are allowed to win, then I suspect that DSA is actually going to become more and more of a presence in our politics. And I mean politics on the ground, but I also just mean electoral politics. That being said, the DSA is not ever going to have a libertarian socialist thrust to it, I don't think. It is far too many authoritarian leftists in it who want it to be a vanguard party, who want it to practice democratic centralism. I am becoming more and more convinced that libertarian socialists probably should not be doing entryism into the DSA. I will still say that my previous opinion I still believe, and that is to say that your local is going to determine whether your DSA is worth being part of. If your local is the only game in town, there's no other leftist organizations in town, then yeah, I can understand why you would join a DSA. If your DSA is like one of the electoral branches, then I don't really think you should be joining it as libertarian socialist, and I don't really think you're going to get much out of it. Yeah, I think that it's moving in a more and more electoralist direction. I think it's moving more in a more democratic sort of centralist direction. And insofar as that's the case, I think that libertarian socialists who've been doing entryism should probably just start making their own organizations. I don't think, and especially given that they voted down direct democracy. I think that was a demonstration that they're moving more towards an autocratic form. They're moving more towards a hierarchical form, a representative form. And insofar as that's the case, they're moving away from democratic principles. And that means that the LibSoc entryism has not been working. It just has. I mean, I don't know what it has achieved at this point. So that's my opinion. Yeah, DSA has the potential to improve material conditions, some through electoralism, but that electoral power is not sovereign. It's a piece of a tainted pie. I mean, yeah, I guess more generally, I would just note that electoralism ends up usually turning into a form of co-option. So mark my words, if there is a huge progressive swing, if the DSA gets a bunch of candidates in and we get a bunch of progressives and social democrats, things will probably improve in a broader sense, but they will also, insofar as that they are successful, probably diminish the revolutionary movement in the country. The revolutionary movement will probably be pacified in lockstep with the success of democratic socialist politicians, because that's pretty much what all of history shows. And at worst, it might actually practice a form of vanguard co-option if it tries to carry out at some point, and we're talking a long time from now, if there's some sort of revolutionary coup those politicians that we stand for right now would be probably the most likely to end up in a position of trying to co-opt a revolutionary movement, because that is what history shows. That being said, in the meantime, it's not a bad thing, because we really do need less fascists in positions of power. And we certainly don't need Democrats to be the one replacing them, or rather, we don't need liberals to be the ones replacing them. We need social democrats to be the ones replacing them. So I will never complain when I see a Zoran Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, and AOC, etc., getting into a position of power. And I also don't care to spend a whole lot of my time criticizing them, because I expect them to fuck up. I expect them to have to exist by the imperatives of the power structure. And I don't see that as a path to our success as a movement. So, yeah, that's sort of my broader feelings. Cy Maurice says, I feel like libertarian socialism has honestly declined as a part of the left after gaining some notoriety up to 2020. Do you agree? If so, what do you think is to be done to counter it? Yeah, no, I do agree. I think that anarchism and libertarian socialism has definitely seen a decline recently. I see less anarchists on the internet, that's for sure. But also, it's a weird thing, because it's like I meet new people all the time who are like socialists, and we talk about their politics, and they're basically libertarian socialists, but they'll call themselves like Marxist-Leninist or something. It's very odd, you know? They'll be like Marxist-Leninists, but they want horizontalism. They'll be Marxist-Leninists, but they want consensus, ? Like, it's very weird. I think that we're in maybe one of the most incoherent, ideologically incoherent periods of the left in years. People seem to have very little understanding of what their beliefs are. Seems like we have mostly vibes-based politics these days. And that's why I'm so grateful to be in a libertarian socialist platform organization. We've certainly not been having any issues. But yeah, no, I mean, more broadly, I've seen a lot of people that are like Marxist-Leninists these days, but also most of those Marxist-Leninists don't have any understanding of their own theory. They don't have any idea what a vanguard actually is. They have no idea what democratic centralism actually looks like. Sometimes they'll say they're democratic centralist, and all they mean is that they debate ideas and then vote on them. And it's like, okay, y'all have completely lost the plot, you know? But I think things go in cycles in that sense. I think things go in cycles. So. Cy Maurice says, I feel like we need to see a libertarian socialist of America emerge sooner rather than later. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. I think that, it's been difficult, you know, I think the hardest thing is that federations generally occur starting from smaller bodies rather than coming together as some kind of national body. And, you know, like here in town, we have a small federation called the Tulsa Equity Alliance, which Cooperation Tulsa is part of. But then what you would want to see is, like, say, we'd want to see a federation in Oklahoma City, and then we would federate with that. Then we have the Oklahoma Federation, and then we would find a Texas Federation or something, and then we would federate with that, and then we would have like a regional federation and so on. That seems to be how generally that anarchist or horizontalist movements build up federations. They generally don't start from the top. But I guess if it worked, I'd be happy to see it work. I think that it's better for people to start in their area and try to federate with their local groups. Glocky says, we did lose a lot of good anarchists. Many of the people I followed are gone off the internet. I think that we are seeing a mass migration off of the internet right now. I think that places like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., they are probably misreporting their numbers. I bet that they are actually seeing a shrinking active user base. I think that a lot of people are stopping using social media because it's bad for their mental health. I'll tell you, I am barely using social media these days. I use it very, very rarely. And most of the people that I see that have stayed or the people who are very active, are the people who were most complicit in making it a mentally distressful place. So like I go to Twitter and it seems like all the worst people are the ones who stuck around, and they're all patting each other on the back for being terrible. And that seems like it's true in a lot of these social media spaces, where now social media is like anti-social media. It's like, it's not good. And it's certainly not serving an organizing purpose at this point. If anything, it seems like instead it's harming organizing. That's what it seems like to me. I've not had any interactions with Black Rose beyond just talking with specific members. There's no Black Rose here in Tulsa. But here in Tulsa, I think it's actually more valuable to call yourself like a communalist or a social ecologist or a libertarian socialist than to call yourself an anarchist. It's funny how we have basically the same politics as Scissortail Anarchist Organization, but Scissortail Anarchist Organization grew far, far slower. I think that I really don't think people should be super concerned with what they're called. I think that the platform of the organization is what should be focused on. So we're about halfway through the stream. I just want to remind people that, if you support the channel, you should go over to my Patreon and become a patron for any amount. It'll get you access to the Anark Discord server. If you want to support me in other ways, obviously you can give me super chats here in chat. That's helpful. But also, if you want to basically become a patron, but on YouTube, you can go down below, click the member button. I don't know what it says. I haven't done it myself. That's basically Patreon for YouTube. Then also you could go over to Means TV and you could use my affiliate code Anark in order to get a discount off of a subscription to Means TV, which is basically just socialist Netflix, but it's also a worker cooperative. So I not only get a return on the number of people who subscribe using my affiliate code, I actually get a small percentage of the company's profits as well, being a worker owner. So yeah, no, it benefits me and it supports a worker cooperative. I'll tell you ahead of time that it's a more broadly socialist platform, so that it is not a libertarian socialist platform strictly. It has a lot of different kinds of socialist thinkers on there. So yeah, those are the main ways you can help the channel. I appreciate everybody being here. I'll probably stick around for another hour and a half, something like that. Ian Mortensen says, I think the enshittification of social media has played a role. The AI slop epidemic drove a lot of people off Facebook, if I remember. No, that's so real, though. Like, everybody I'm talking with right now is deeply distressed that all of the foundations or all of the things that we used to be able to kind of trust are just becoming more and more untrustworthy. So like AI is everywhere now, and AI is good enough that it's not always easy to tell whether it is a fake or not. And then you're in this position where the bots are good enough where you can't really tell if you're talking with a bot anymore. It used to be that I'd be like, oh, this is obviously a bot. These days, it's like, I don't know, it could be an AI, this person, this wrecker, this asshole, this person who's constantly going into every conversation to, well, actually, that person could just be an AI that was like hired by the fucking FBI. Who knows? Like, honestly, at this point, it's very difficult to know if anybody you're talking to is real, if any picture you see is real. Everything is untrustworthy. We're living in a time where everything feels like the foundations are slipping out from underneath our feet. There is nothing to hold on to. And I think that makes most people feel very distressed. And so a lot of people are kind of migrating off of the social media platforms, and they're migrating off the internet sometimes. People are using a lot less of the internet. Now, I think there's some positive aspects to that. I don't think that's like all bad. I do think that it probably won't last. There probably will be something else on the internet that will bring a lot of people back, but it'll have to be something that deals with the problems that we're discussing. It can't just be another thing that tries to capitalize off of the same thing all the previous social media did. It's going to have to be some social media that is fundamentally paradigm changing. And I don't think something like Blue Sky or Mastodon is enough to be considered that fundamentally paradigm changing. I think there's some aspect where it's like, obviously a lot of these AIs and a lot of the bots that are around, it's like they're just trying to piss people off. You know, it used to be that these big companies, they would take whatever kind of attention they could get, good attention, bad attention. These days, it seems like they want bad attention. I mean, especially Twitter. I feel like Elon Musk just wants people to be angry. He just wants people to be angry. He wants them to not understand what's really happening in the world. He wants them to be deluded and confused. He wants them to be split up into a bunch of little groups arguing with each other. And at the same time, you know, you've got Peter Thiel, who's expanding all of the surveillance of everything we do everywhere. You know, it feels like the internet's becoming a dystopia. The universe... It was never a utopia, but it was more utopic when I was young. There used to be this aspect where it was bringing people together. And it really did seem like, as people spoke with each other, yes, there were tensions. Yes, all kinds of bad shit was happening. But people were not coming together and getting into huge arguments, hatefully trying to destroy each other. Right? Like, that wasn't the default. It happened sometimes, but it wasn't like, the trend wasn't in that direction. The trend was more in the direction of a sort of progressive mentality. But then all of the oligarchs began to solidify their control over all of these places, and fascists began to make 1,000 false fake accounts. And all of the most vile people like Andrew Tate and fucking Ben Shapiro and, you know, all these grifters, I imagine a bunch of them were probably botting their own accounts, scamming people to also, like, you know, make a bunch of accounts and like their stuff, and just doing all of these deceptive things. They essentially crowbarred their way into the conversation, such that the organic process that was driving towards a more progressive mentality now is poisoned with this fascist sort of cancer that is in everything. And this is part of the reason why that the left has been saying for so long that you don't let fascists in anywhere, that you kick them out of your spaces ASAP, that you marginalize them, that you discourage them, because they are like a sickness. Fascism is like a sickness. And the more people it infects, the more that it destroys society. The higher depression is going to get, the more that loneliness is going to get, because people hate each other more, because people are less tolerant, because people now have to worry that everybody they're talking to has the fascist stain upon them. Fascism is an anti-human, anti-solidaric impulse. Even though it claims otherwise, its claims are false. But yeah. I mean, as Bryce says, the internet has been colonized. That is absolutely the case. It's really, as you just said, there's been a huge surge in negativity online over just the past few months, and even though it was already bad, and everyone is being hateful and mean, and it's so true. You know, it used to be where it was like, you know, there wasn't an expectation that you were going to be like perfectly empathetic, but there was some expectation. There was an expectation you would have a basic human empathy, right? Like, not an extraordinary empathy. Nobody's perfect, but it was understood that if you had no empathy, you were garbage and everybody wanted you to leave, right? It wasn't like, now it's almost like, oh, you have empathy, you're fucking stupid. It's like empathy. Like, why would you waste your time with that? I'm just trying to find the next person to trash on. I'm trying to find the next person to dunk on, And, I realized because, I've been kind of depressed for the last few days or so, and I found that I'm more agitated. And that's a natural outcome of being depressed. And it occurs to me, probably everybody's super depressed right now, and people are just very agitated and want to tear other people down. They're externalizing their internal misery. And so we're seeing a sort of doom spiral that is occurring because of that. And the only way, let me say to everyone here, the only way you can not contribute to that is by not contributing to it. It's by not being cruel. It's by not being vengeful. It's by not holding grudges. It's by being charitable. It's by steel manning other people's positions, being patient. And let me say, probably the skill that people are most lacking, it seems like, is emotional self-regulation. People seem to justify any emotion they experience when someone says something. If someone says something that makes them angry or sad or resentful or whatever it is, they just let loose. They don't practice any emotional self-regulation. And if you tell them to emotionally self-regulate, they say that you're tone policing them. Which that's not what tone policing is, by the way. Tone policing is not when somebody tells you to stop being an asshole. Tone policing is when somebody doesn't address your argument, they only address your tone, right? So like, for example, a woman makes a point, but she's mean while she makes it. And they say, God, you're such a bitch. Well, notice they didn't address the point, right? They just addressed the tone. That is tone policing, trying to get somebody to just be nicer, but not trying to address the argument itself. Also, might I add, it is not tone policing to be watching two people screaming at each other and to be like, hey, can you all just please stop screaming at each other? Like, calm down. Take it down a few notches, please. Right? Take it down a few notches. That's also not tone policing. Or if it is, I don't care about tone policing. If that's what tone policing is, then I don't care about it. And it's good, actually. Tone policing is good if that's what it is. But it's not what it is. Okay? What tone policing actually is a way to avoid addressing arguments. That is what tone policing is. So people need to stop that shit. Like, I understand if you're depressed, you probably do not have the patience to deal with people saying stupid shit. So don't. Just stop. Stop engaging with them if you can't do that. If you cannot practice a degree of self-regulation, of emotional self-regulation, then you need to stop talking with people about complicated subjects. These are subjects which require nuance, especially political philosophy, because, we're all here because we have some sort of tendency towards political philosophy. If that's the case, you need to practice nuance. You really do. You need to practice nuance. Stop taking the easy way out. Stop trying to just mischaracterize your opponent. Stop trying to wiggle out by looking for some little slight, some little misspoken word they used or some implication they didn't address. Just stop with that shit. All you're doing is you're splitting apart communities. You are discouraging people further. You're harming our ability to actually have any kind of revolutionary activity. If right now in these conditions, in these current conditions, you are spending your time tearing down people that are relatively close to you on the political spectrum, and you're not instead spending your time tearing down fascists, that is counter-revolutionary behavior. That behavior right now is essentially kicking the movement when it is down. You need to stop. And listen, this comes from me, anybody who's seen my presence on Twitter knows that I have had an unhealthy presence on Twitter. Okay? Twitter has been unhealthy for me. I've said things that I shouldn't have said on Twitter just because I got too angry. I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to any of y'all, but but there have been also periods where it was appropriate that I got into arguments, right? I'm okay with the entire arc I had where I got into arguments with authoritarian leftists, but that's because we weren't living under this sort of looming fascism, this techno dystopia that is invading every part of our lives and the internet. Okay. Like, you need to stop fighting with other anarchists, stop fighting with libertarian socialists in general, I would say, by default, just stop. Okay. Even if you have good arguments, even if you have a good reason to disagree with this person, you need to stop having big, messy arguments out in public where you just try to make yourself look good. You need to probably even stop, for the most part, shitting on authoritarian leftists, because right now, if you have the energy to be shitting on anyone, you should be shitting on fascists. You should be spending your time shitting on right-wingers. Because the truth is that right now, that is our mortal enemy. Our mortal enemy. They're building concentration camps across the nation right now. Okay? Like, yeah, authoritarian leftists are duplicitous a lot of the time. And yes, many of them may very well co-opt the movement. But stop wasting your fucking time on them right now. Okay? Like, during the Bernie era, when we were ascendant, it made sense. It made sense to be like, I disagree with this person, and I'm going to explain why, to have our big, intra-left death battle. But right now, your greatest purpose is to be organizing us towards success. We need, more than anything, to be getting groups of people together in order to build a counterpower. So if you're getting on social media and your first priority is just to argue with other leftists, you need to stop. You are the unhealthy presence. And it's not to say that, of course, there's never a good reason to critique other leftists, but you need to learn the right time and place. Okay? And that's what I think. I think we need to de-escalate. I don't remember. Oh, I think it was Margaret Killjoy who said, we need to de-escalate all conflicts that are not with the enemy right now. That is where we're at the moment. Like, okay, so Rotten Mouse says, what about SOCDEMs? Are arguments with them about effective strategies as far as electoralism goes worthwhile? Yeah, it's okay to disagree with people insofar as you can articulately discuss your disagreements and problems, okay? But what I think that we normalized way too much on the left was this thing where when we disagree with somebody, we start by insulting and demeaning them and mischaracterizing their positions and pretending like they were evil in the process. So if people want to, calmly explain in the right place why they disagree with electoral strategies and what risks that they think that those strategies hold, that's fully appropriate. Okay. But also don't turn it into a big shit slinging fest. Right now, people are at the depths of depression. Do you understand? People are so fucking down right now, and not down in the good way. They are so down in the depths. People are so fucking depressed right now. Everybody I speak to is depressed. Okay? And a lot of the people aren't even like far leftists, radical leftists. People are depressed. People are so hopeless right now. If you're going to spend your time getting into an argument, shitting on people on the internet, just understand you're probably pushing somebody further into the mud who's already in the mud. And yeah, maybe they said some shit they shouldn't have said. Maybe they did, but that's probably because they're depressed. And probably part of the reason you want to say the stuff you want to say is because you're depressed. And you need to not give in to those impulses. Those are antisocial impulses. Those degrade our spaces. That makes people want to be in our spaces less. That pushes our people out of the struggle. It exhausts them even further. Okay? Struggle against fascism, revolutionary struggle, is exhausting by its very nature. It's so exhausting. It really is. It's very tiring for those of you who have been in it, even as long as I have. And I haven't been in it that long. I've only been in it for, 13 years or whatever, right? You know that to be a leftist long-term requires being able to cognitively cope with losing over a long period of time. You have to be able to come back to the struggle and try again after having failed. So when you go into our spaces and you spend all your time shitting on other leftists, you are essentially preventing people from healthily coping with those struggles. You know, one thing that really occurs to me, I think is a big reason why we're losing in the modern era when in the past that we used to win. And I think a big part of it is that back in the day, in the late 1800s, when a radical would come knock on your door, what they would bring you good news. Okay? That might sound weird, but the good news was basically like, me and you, I don't know you, buddy, but we're part of the same struggle. Me and you, we are part of a revolutionary class. We are both workers. Neither of us own the means of production. We are daily exploited. And we have a bond with one another. Me and you, we are comrades. We are bound together in a struggle against an enemy that is much greater than us, but which we are destined to defeat. But we have to work together if we're going to do that. Okay? I don't know what your opinions are on anything that we could discuss, but I need you to know that we have a shared goal in mind. Okay? And you know, maybe we'll have some conflicts along the way, but we need to cooperate when it comes to these things. We have a historic duty on our shoulders, a historic duty to revolutionize society. And in order for that to happen, me and you, we got to quash our struggles. We got to practice solidarity. Okay? We have to unite as a class. We have to unionize our workplaces. That's the message that people used to bring to the workers. As Mavolt says, in the past we used to win. Yeah, by comparison to this, we used to win. Okay? We used to actually be able to bring a positive vision to people. We actually used to say, me and you, we're fighting together. We have a unified purpose together. We have a collective interest. Okay? And yeah, of course the left, did all its fracturing and infighting, all of that. But it did that amongst a very optimistic revolutionary orientation. But contrast that to the modern day. Well, somebody said we had unions in the past. Yeah, we had unions in the past because of what I just said. That's how we got unions. Unions didn't come out of nowhere. Unions came about from people doing this. This is what created the unions. Okay, people with this is what created a global revolutionary movement. Okay, and somebody said if we had won, we wouldn't be here. Yeah, obviously we didn't win the total goal, but we used to have wins. I don't think a lot of you know what it's like to be part of a movement against something and to actually get that thing to stop happening. Okay? You have a workplace where everybody is paid shit and barely can survive. And then they organized a union together and the union struck until they got better pay. And guess what? They got better pay. They succeeded. This is a lot of what used to be so successful. People would get together. They would find their common interest. They would organize, a union. And they did that, might I add, when unions were literally illegal. Okay? The unions were illegal. They had worse conditions than we have. Our unions are legal a lot of the time. Their unions were literally illegal. They had laws against too many people gathering in public at the same time. They had laws against, 10, 20, 30 people gathering in public. And they made unions and they won. And they won against a far more ruthless capitalist class. Okay? And what I'm talking about right now is why. This is why they won. Because when they came to people to tell them about their ideology was not doom and gloom and, oh, we're going to lose and woe is me. And, look how I'm going to just get shit on all day long. And, oh man, I just guess we're fucked, like navel gazing. Is there such a thing as the truth? Stop. That shit doesn't work. Nobody wants to hear that. You want to know why the left is marginal? It's because nobody wants to fucking hear that. Okay? You know what people want to hear? There's hope. that there is goodness in the world and that we can bring it about through our concerted actions. You know what? That requires patience. That requires you being able to deal with people sucking sometimes and being annoying sometimes. It requires you to be able to put yourself in danger. For you to be in places where you are not comfortable, where it is difficult, where people are frustrating you. You have to learn emotional regulation, and you have to also stop spreading this fucking doom and gloom bullshit. Stop telling people that we're going to lose. You think anybody wants to fucking join a struggle where they believe they're going to lose? Nobody wants to join a losing struggle. Okay? Nobody wants to fucking struggle for the joy of struggle. That's fucking bullshit. That's cope. That's cope that people who lose battles tell themselves. Okay? If you want to actually win battles, you need to do what is necessary to win battles. And what is necessary to win battles is to give people hope. You have to give them hope that victory is possible. And then you have to devote yourself to doing what is necessary to achieve victory. I'm just so incredibly tired of... It's like, okay, if it were like the 1950s or the 1960s and I were hearing about these sort of nihilist perspectives, if I were hearing about these perspectives that individualize rather than give collective interest, I think I would have been more open to them, because at that point we would have now seen the failure of the USSR, the failure of the Spanish Civil War. And I'd be asking myself, maybe it's just, we did something fundamentally wrong. We got to start from scratch and do it over again. And, I would have said, sure, let's run that experiment if it'd been like the 1960s or something. But it is now 2025. It has been like 70 years since we started running this nihilistic, individualistic, navel-gazing attempt. And it has achieved exactly fucking nothing. Exactly zero. Nothing. Nothing at all. Anti-organizationalism and pure spontaneity and revolt for the sake of revolt while believing we're going to fucking lose. Like, this shit has achieved nothing. Nothing has happened. Okay? Now, take that period of time. 65, 70 years. Okay? Now compare that to what happened in the 1800s. Think about what happened starting from the early 1800s to the late 1800s in the span of 65 or 70 years. And then ask yourself, which one worked better? Which one achieved more? Okay? Their revolution spanned for the entire fucking planet. They had real international bonds between people in completely different nations and continents. They were struggling and succeeding in overthrowing entire areas, that were claimed by the bourgeois. They were claiming entire aspects of industry with workers' councils. They were literally cooing and overthrowing states with the number of unions that they had made. And then tell me we've achieved even 1/10,000% of that, because we haven't. We have nothing to show for this alternative. The only thing that will work is that we don't have to do everything exactly the same, but we have to know what did work about that. And what worked was strong organizational ethos. That is to say, they were pro-organization and pro-formality. Hopeful messaging. We can win, but we must do X. Winning, it relies upon our hard work and our solidarity. And that brings me to 3, solidaric messaging. Messaging which brings together, which coalition builds rather than splits coalitions. Okay? Individualization and atomization, that is self-therapeutic. That's something that you can go through and you can practice, and other people should learn about each other's individual experiences, but our rhetoric needs to be about collective interest, things we hold in common interest, as Bookchin calls it. Okay? Those are the things that actually succeed in all eras of history. There's nothing unique or special or fancy about this one in that sense. That is always what works in all eras of history. What gets power for people is formal, long-term power structures that have clear organizational ethos and that build power for that particular solidaric in-group. And unless we do that, we are absolutely fucked. So, sorry for the long rant, but this has been stressing me out because it just occurs to me that here we are on the precipice of a fucking techno dystopian apocalypse. Okay. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing a bunch of leftists still fucking arguing with people. Still arguing, still tearing each other down, still mischaracterizing one another. Like, holy fucking shit. I can't imagine being any more out of touch than that. Get your shit together and stop arguing with people. Or rather, if you're going to argue, have a civil argument where you actually accurately try to characterize their positions. Stop doing this thing where all you want to do, where you have an emotional reaction and then you just try to just tear them down any way you can. Like you're just looking for any way possible to escape your emotional reaction. Stop that. If that's something you do, you're in the wrong. Don't do it anymore. If you do that, you're the one destroying our spaces. What you need to do instead is when you feel that emotional response, you need to give yourself time to regulate. Stop, calm yourself. Remember that you're not the center of the universe. And instead, try to rationally understand and describe why their position is wrong. Not through characterization, not through saying, that's fascist. Explain what you disagree with. Otherwise, stop having arguments in public. Nobody wants to watch you have an emotional meltdown in public. It's not only is it bad optics, which, whatever. No, it's also discouraging for everyone else to watch. Do you understand that when you look on, you do understand. You all know this. When you look on Twitter, okay, and you see two people you know who you like, and they're just tearing each other apart. They're not even making arguments to each other. They're just tearing each other apart. You know how discouraging that is, right? Like you feel that feeling of discouragement. Well, just understand that when you engage in it, think about how many people are watching you and feeling discouraged by that. Think about how many people are going to be discouraged by your engagement when you act like that. It's a lot. It's a lot. Probably more than you know even. You do have a duty to others to practice rational argumentation and emotional self-regulation. And you also have a duty not to be cruel to people who are ostensibly on the same line as you. People who are against the fascists. Okay? You can disagree with people without being a fucking edgelord. Everything doesn't need to be a dunk. Okay. Perspectiva says formal organization creates rigid essentialist structures. There's just no reason to believe that. That is one of these made up copes of the era I'm talking about. Anti-organizationalism is exactly what has failed, and it failed because it had beliefs just like that. Formal organization is just having common agreements. Okay? When people carry out actions, if you want coordinated action, you need for the people to have common expectations. When people have common expectations, this then means that they can rely and trust that others will act within the set of those common expectations. Formalization is the method by which you develop those expectations and you clarify those expectations to everyone. You might say, oh, you can do that without formality. No, you really can't. In fact, I've seen it. People try, but at best what you get is like rules of thumb. You get some rules of thumb, and then lo and behold, people always violate the unspoken rules. Informal organization leads to infighting, breakage. It leads to the organization falling apart. Generally, it falls apart before it can even achieve anything. Okay, this is what I've found. Instead, they form this organization. It has no spoken rules, and therefore no common expectations, and therefore everybody steps on each other's toes, and 3 months go by and it explodes. Okay, there is a reason formality exists. There's a reason why formality exists in horizontal structures historically, well before Western invention. Like, this is not. This is not controversial at this point. You understand? Like, formality is good. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Murray is annoyed at me talking for so long. Formal organizations can also, as Cy Maurice says, they are uniquely capable of carrying on long-term projects at scale and maintaining social memory. That's a big part of it. Okay. Is like, doing everything ad hoc is completely ineffective. Completely ineffective. Ad hoc is only good for things that are not super important. The more important something is and the more people rely on it, the more you're going to need formality. The formality is what creates this constant structure by which people can refer to the structure and say, hey, I know who is responsible for X because here's the structure. That container contains the people that are responsible for that activity. Your ad hoc 3-month-long affinity group can't have any responsibility because nobody knows who the fuck is responsible when you are your own self-appointed authority and you get to make all the decisions for this thing that affect a bunch of other people. And, oh my gosh, Murray, stop pressing on the keyboard. That essentially leads to also not having long-term education. Okay. When you don't have a long-term organization, people don't learn the skills as well. Instead, what they do is they learn them for a very short period of time, just long enough for the organization to dissolve. And the organization itself, since it doesn't have a formal structure, it doesn't contain any alterations to its structure to account for the education that has taken place. So, for example, like if you have no informal structure, let's imagine that you're just doing mutual aid. Okay, you're feeding homeless people. And, what you found was it was easiest to pick up from this particular place you wanted to pick up stuff from once a week. Okay. But after you did it long enough, you found that picking it up once a week was bad for a variety of reasons. Maybe the food like spoiled or something, and that's not what you wanted, right? Okay. So you have no formal structure, so there's no place where those rules are codified. The rules and norms are nowhere codified. So the group of people who are originally part of it now, imagine they've completely cycled out. Now the 5 people you originally have, now there's 5 more people, and they have no memory of that. Okay. Now they return to the same ineffective thing where their food is spoiling again because there's no institutional memory. That is a small scale example, but now imagine that this isn't the food you're giving to one person or just 60 homeless people. Maybe it's the food that you're giving to thousands of people. Maybe you're a council that is distributing goods to millions of people. Do you really think that's going to be able to do ad hoc? You think people are just going to be able to put together distribute the goods of an entire productive economy committee that's going to last a few months and then people will just fuck off and go elsewhere and then we'll just create a new one when we need it? Like, formality is a necessity of any large scale thing. As something gets more sophisticated and it has more responsibility, as it gets larger scale, formality is a necessity, not a luxury, and certainly not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Formality is what maintains it's the learning process of the organization by which the organization can alter itself and store its memory. It is therefore the development of legible rules and norms. And it is what allows there to be points of accountability external to itself. Because once it exists, people know that it is what handles that thing. Informality doesn't do any of the things I just noted. And moreover, not only does it not do them, it can't do them. It's impossible for it to do those things. So, yeah, no, I just disagree very, very fundamentally. Anti-organizationalism, non-organizationalism just doesn't work. It's an idea without a reality to it. Yeah, as Sai says, imagine trying to do something like construct a hospital meant to serve a definable area without formal organization. Yeah, I mean, just like what? Like people are just going to show up some days and not show up, and who even knows who the foreman is, or who even knows who the person who knows how to do the drywall is, or who even knows if the guy who does the plumbing is going to show up, or like. You don't have any rules and norms. There's no accountability because there's no formal delegation. It's just, completely ineffective. Completely ineffective. I've seen it firsthand. All the affinity groups are good for things that are really low stakes, right? Or rather, I'll say it's like there's two categories. Things that are really low stakes, like, if you want like a reading group or something, doesn't probably need like a charter really. Or things that are very clandestine and militant. But even then, I would recommend you do have an internal formal charter. Not one that everybody knows about, but internally, y'all know about your rules and norms. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm just so tired of seeing this fail, and everybody keeps being like, I've figured it out for the first time. All we have to do is not have a formal structure, and surely we'll just figure it out on the spot. And it's like, damn, you would think that would have worked in the last 70 years once. Weird that it never works. Zero literally is 100% failure rate. Really peculiar. I mean, it just isn't a feasible theory of organization. As Ismavolt says, why would you want to organize as little as possible? Good organizing is how you get rid of bureaucracies. Yes, good organizing is also how you hold abuses of power accountable. It's how you prevent people from accumulating power. When you have no organization, people gain power, but there's no accountability other than the whims of other people excluding and shunning them. But good luck, because in my experience, the people doing the shunning are often the ones that need to be held accountable. Not always, obviously, but a lot of the time, the shunners are the ones in the wrong. So then what's your informality going to do? How does your informality account for that? It doesn't. And formality just does. There's a reason why that it exists. There's a reason why that the Iroquois Confederacy had formal rules and norms. Okay. It's not just, it's a good thing. Formality is good. Formality just needs to evolve with the ongoing consent of the members. Like, formality does not mean rigidity. You can change your charter. Cooperation Tulsa has a very complex charter, but we have changed it many times now. We've changed it probably discreetly and in like a big formative way, like 5 or 6 times, and in small ways, dozens of times. It's a place where we keep our rules and norms, our expectations. Yeah, as Bookchin says, centralization becomes most acute when disintegration occurs at the base of society. So, okay, Vlad the Impaler, you came here just to say class is the primary contradiction. Let me ask you a question. What were you hoping to achieve when you came here to say that? Because this seems like, as somebody said, this just seems like you're here to rage bait. Like, what is it you wanted people to say to this? Like, did you want people to get angry and argue with you? Because you know you're just going to get dogpiled if that's the case, and nobody's going to change their mind based on that. Or did you just want people to get angry? Like, why would that be good for you? For people to just, a bunch of people to get angry at you? How would that be helpful? Or did you actually expect people to agree? But like, you're around libertarian socialists and anarchists. None of us are class reductionists. So what was the point of that? Help me understand your psychology, because I don't get it. What's happening here? Yeah, as Victorious Garden says, it seems like it's just to derail an intelligent discussion. So like, tell us, what's your answer? Oh, okay. You said something else about anarchist defense earlier in the comments, but I guess you missed it. I don't know. I also don't see how that accords to you saying class is the primary contradiction. Vlad the Impaler, you complain about leftists shitting on other leftists, but you do that all the time with MLs. No, I criticize MLs. Okay? I criticize MLs. I try to provide actually substantive criticism of MLs. The things I say are not just meant to be, purposeless insults. I'm not trying to rage bait. I'm not trying to sling mischaracterizations. The things that I say about MLs are things which are informed by me studying history and reading their theory. This is like, I came to the conclusions that I came to by informing myself about their ideas, considering the nuance of their perspectives, and this is the result. I think the things that I say about these. I don't go around purposely just shitting on MLs specifically. Notice that, like, I made a video where I criticized Second Thought, but do you see me spending my live streams like specifically just trying to dunk on Second Thought or dunk on Hakeem or dunk on name the specific person? No, I mean, if they come up, I will say my opinion, but notice how I don't individualize my critiques. I make my critiques structurally based on my real criticisms of that perspective. I'm not just trying to start an argument. I'm not just trying to get people angry. These are real criticisms. They're just criticisms that MLs are incapable of responding to, is the problem. And so instead of responding to them, they get angry. And then, well, historically on Twitter, I would just, this was like years ago. I think maybe you can go back to 2017, 18, something like that. I would just go toe to toe and try to win the argument, you might say. But the criticisms that I make of MLs these days are not ones where I'm trying to get anybody angry, because I don't really want anybody to be angry. I don't really see the purpose that it serves. I am just making informed critiques. Are informed critiques not good? So you say, my point is that id poll should be secondary to class. See, id poll, you immediately give away to me that you think that there is this whole category of issues that are not important. What you're saying to me is that you want to focus narrowly on economics, and you don't care about white supremacy, and you don't care about transphobia, and you don't care about patriarchy, and you don't care about religious supremacy, and you don't care about ableism, and you don't care about any of these other things, right? This is the old canard of the left, trying to make these primary and secondary contradictions. It's a distraction. You don't need to make anything secondary in this sense. There's no purpose to it. The only purpose to it is if you are trying to sideline those other things. What you're trying to do is saying, we're just going to ignore patriarchy. We're just going to ignore white supremacy. In which case, we're never going to win. Because all of those things you call idpol, those things called idpol, those things all crucially reinforce and mutually reconstitute class politics. Economics are determined, the structure of the economic system is crucially determined by things like white supremacy, homophobia, patriarchy. These things determine the structure of the class system. And these things are contained ideologically and structurally within many parts of society. They're contained within the systems of law, but they're also contained in all kinds of interpersonal behaviors. They're contained in people's ideology and expectations of the world. And if you don't care about quote unquote idpol, then your organizations are probably going to be patriarchal, white supremacist, ableist, transphobic. And even if you don't want them to be, okay, even if you don't want them to be, let's say you don't like that, okay, let's say you think those things are bad. But here's the thing. If every time somebody comes to you with a problem that is based in white supremacy, that is based in transphobia or whatever, and what you say is, sorry, we don't have time to worry about this. This is just idpol. It's secondary to class contradictions. Well, then you clearly don't care about those things. You don't have a way of actually fighting back against them. And it's clear if you don't care about them right now, you'll never care about them. And don't delude yourself that they're just going to disappear into thin air as soon as your revolution takes place. We can see from example that's not true. Okay? Like the USSR at various times had all kinds of reactionary laws. Cuba has had at various times all kinds of reactionary laws. China, in many ways, is very reactionary in a general sense. It's like, clearly it is not enough to just resolve economic contradictions and just think that white supremacy is going to disappear, or that patriarchy literally preceding the existence of capitalism. Okay. Patriarchy comes before capitalism. It formed before capitalism. Thinking that anything can be secondary in that sense, what it really means is that you aren't going to put in the effort to change anything and you don't care about it being changed. Okay. Even if you profess to care, by saying that you want those things deprioritized, you're saying they're never going to get fixed by fact, just because of the realities of what takes place when your ideas come into fruition. Class reductionism does not just inherently fix all of these secondary problems. Yeah, Sai says, in the light of history, I'm not sure how people can still believe that simply declaring class struggle will make other struggles fall away. I think it's cope, honestly. It is. It's cope. And it is a way, in a general sense, it is a way for the dominant group in whatever group to declare that they don't care about the problems of that other group. Right? In many ways, class reductionism is a way for white people, white men, not to have to worry about the struggles of black people and women. That's primarily its historic purpose. And I understand that there have been black class reductionists, but you'll notice there's a lot fewer of them, right? Like it takes place a lot less often. And you also notice that historically, when women were told they had to wait until after the revolution, they never accepted that as a good answer, right? Like that just wasn't generally okay with them. Like take the CNT-FAI in Spain. They were told they had to wait until after the revolution to deal with women's issues. Well, they didn't, and they formed Mujeres Libres. And that is the way that women got power in the process. That is the way that it had some form of feminism within the revolution, was because the women refused to wait. There's so many examples of this. Or let's look at the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. Okay, so in Nicaragua, you had the Sandinistas, which had a very strong presence of women. There were a lot of women in the Sandinistas. But when you actually saw the highest leadership, it was men. And when asked if they were trying to displace classical gender notions, they said no, that wasn't an important aspect of the struggle that they were doing. And then when they won their struggle and they got into power, they just left all those women behind. They just left them behind. They didn't give them positions of authority in the new government. They didn't, remember them as heroes of the revolution, because patriarchy continued to exist. This really isn't like rocket science, right? This isn't complex if you think about it for 5 minutes. And when somebody says, all I care about is class, I just want to leave idpol behind, what I hear is, and I don't know if this is true of you, I'm not trying to mischaracterize you, but what I hear generally is, I am a white, straight man, and I don't care about white supremacy and patriarchy and things that affect other people. I care about class because class is what affects me, and I don't want to have to worry about other people's niche social issues. And that is a dead end. There's just no way around it. That is a dead end. That won't work. You know, as I said earlier, there's strength in developing things that have a common collective interest. It's telling me that I'm getting really bad lag right now, but my other metrics are saying that it's fine. It's really weird. Don't know what's going on with that. And this is not to say that there is not a great deal of value in the class analysis. This is not to say that we shouldn't emphasize a class analysis precisely because it brings many people together, right? Precisely because that is a shared interest across so many different people. That is a good thing. That's a good reason to appeal to that common interest, is because it is so almost nigh universal. So many people are workers rather than capitalists, right? But to say that that's all we should worry about is just to ignore the failures of that notion. There's just no way to argue for that and also know history. If you know history, you've seen it fail enough times. Every revolution that is actually promising in dismantling the structures as they stand has been one that has also contained a significant feminist element. At minimum, it has to have a feminist element. And I say that only because in those examples, that's a place where there wasn't an enormous presence of, say, white supremacy. Or rather where the coalition was not a multiracial coalition, such as in Spain. Or I know that there was a multiracial coalition, but most people in Spain were white, or white passing, as you might say. In those places, then you have to have a feminist struggle. In places where you have a multiracial, multigender coalition, then you need to also have a struggle against white supremacy. And if you have people who are abled and disabled in the same, then you need to fight against ableism. And if you have people who are trans and people who are cis in the same coalition, then you're also going to need to fight against transphobia. There's no way to leave these out of the picture. And there's also no use in trying to rank them and tell people, sorry, we don't have time to worry about this, or, that'll come after the revolution. That's fundamentally incorrect. That's an incorrect understanding. History refutes that idea, and honestly, sheer logic refutes that idea. John says, while social issues are real and should not be ignored, they cannot be resolved without first resolving the underlying economic issue. All of their oppressions are symptoms of capitalism. But that's just factually not true. Okay? both parts of this argument are factually incorrect. And I'll address the second one first. You said all of the oppressions are symptoms of capitalism. I don't know how else to say that is factually incorrect. Patriarchy literally precedes monarchy. Patriarchy, gerontocracy, these things came before the structure of monarchy. We didn't even have like the feudal system before we had those things. Saying that all we need to do is abolish capitalism and then somehow, finally, patriarchy is going to just disappear, that is a false statement, or rather, really a completely erroneous belief. I mean, I just gave the example with the Sandinistas. Here, they had a revolution, things changed in a very major way, and yet, patriarchy still existed because the system of governance still upheld the patriarchal structure, because patriarchy was a social structure that existed preceding to all of this and therefore continued to reify itself within the existing structures after the revolutionary juncture. This is a very common thing to take place. If you do not understand this, then you are going to fall into this trap over and over and over. These things have to all be simultaneously combated. There's no this, then this, then this. You deal with all of them. You try to do your best to prefigure something that is a transformative vehicle as you can. And that vehicle cannot only be economic. It's not enough for it to be economic. There are also governmental systems by which all kinds of forms of discrimination and favoritism can be imbued into those governmental structures. And the first part, as you said, they cannot be resolved without first resolving the underlying economic issue. That part I'll say I agree with more than the second part, but I'll say that's also not strictly true. Right? We have matriarchal societies on Earth right now, and everywhere on Earth functions under capitalism. There are still matriarchal structures, and so you can have matriarchal structures under capitalism. I will say that you're right to say that that's, there's more of a disruption there. There's more of a disagreement, but also there are societies where white supremacy does not operate the machinery of society, and they're capitalist. Right? We'd be looking at societies with more Pan-African sympathies. You'd be looking at societies where racism is mostly just a colonial project. These cannot be, I would say, fully eliminated because every hierarchy props up all of the other hierarchies, but you can diminish them enormously. And there is a large degree of variation on all of these things. But here's the thing. What is missing in your analysis is that the foundational problem, foundational issue is not the economic system of capitalism. That's, of course, it's a major contributor, very, very large contributor. But it's really that the hierarchical power structure is the default of every kind of social structural system that pervades society. So the system of race is hierarchical. The system of our economy is a hierarchical system. Our conception of the genders is hierarchical, man above woman. And this is the issue. Hierarchies perpetuate one another. This is also why the USSR, even though ostensibly it made some enormous change in the economic base, really continued to perpetuate many of the problems of the previous society. It attempted by propaganda to change them, but by fact changed very few of them. So yeah, it requires more than just getting rid of capitalism. Just getting rid of capitalism is not going to just do away with all of these other hierarchical relations of power, because hierarchical power structures are the real underlying issue. Insofar as that hierarchical power structures continue to exist, other hierarchical power structures will reify them. They will reify themselves through the other hierarchical power structures. They mutually support one another. They act as like support structures to the diminishment of one another. And where one is diminished, the other one takes up some form of power that has been stolen from the other. The only way you eliminate that is through the active countervalence of hierarchical power structures, through the prefigurative development of horizontal power structures. because that is this process by which power is disseminated to a larger group of people, and it is disseminated to the people who were previously deprived of their ability to make decisions about the world and to participate in implementation of those decisions. So wherever a hierarchy exists, the problems will exist. Let's see here. Oh, Eric Gray donated $5. I appreciate you. He says, happy Black August. And of course, I have a reading recommendation, Black August 2020 by Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement in the Anarchist Library. Cool. Well, I wasn't actually familiar with that. I'll probably go read that one. Yeah, as Ismavolt says, slavery, caste, theocracy, they all existed before capitalism. Cy Maurice says, hierarchy shaped class just as much as class shaped hierarchy. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And then Ismavolt continues, capitalism employs patriarchy and racism and ableism and so on, but that doesn't mean these things wouldn't exist without it. Precisely so. Yeah, hierarchy traditionally prefigured class rather than the other way around. Yeah, class did not create hierarchy, hierarchies created class. John says, the only way to challenge the capitalist system is through the collective action of a unified working class, regardless of their individual identities. Focusing on identity-based struggles can fragment this necessary unity and prevent a cohesive revolutionary movement from forming. I mean, it can if done wrong. You're right to say that if you have a liberal analysis of these identity-based struggles, that can absolutely fracture a unified working class. I agree with you 100%, but that's a symptom of a liberal analysis. That's not a symptom of the analysis and recognition of these facts. Okay? Like that's what I'm trying to get across to you here, is that there is a revolutionary analysis of these things, and it does not have to root from everything is about capitalism. So those things are all secondary and we'll worry about them later. That's not how it has to be approached in order for it to be revolutionary. You can regard that, yes, we should not split ourselves up into 1,000 tiny groups based on our identities because that makes us weaker. That's fair. I agree with you. However, it's not just a dichotomy where class reductionism, we don't care about that stuff, or liberal identity politics. Intersectionality is perfectly wedded with a revolutionary conception, because intersectionality recognizes that there is a web of these oppressions and that we all both share aspects of these oppressions with one another and do not share certain aspects of those oppressions with one another. That in some places we are on the side, we are the oppressor, or rather we benefit from a system of oppression. And on another one, we are the victim of a system of oppression. But the whole point that you point out here, and the one that I agree with, is that the class analysis is a unifying analysis. It's analysis that brings all of our interests together, but that doesn't go away in an intersectional analysis. We still, of course, have this unified class interest. The unified class interest goes nowhere in the intersectional analysis. It doesn't disappear. It's just part of the picture. And there's no reason why we need to crowd out the analysis of identity in order to make room for class. There's room for all of these at the same time. What we have to do is we have to reject a liberal identity politics. A liberal identity politics is individualizing. It splits people up into echo chambers. And the perpetuation, might I add, of a class-only politics is a fracturing of the working class. Going to black communities and telling them, all I care about is class. I don't care about the struggle of black people. I don't care about white supremacy. Right now, we just need to worry about overthrowing capitalism. That isn't going to unify the working class, right? That's not going to bring, oh, wow, okay, well, I'm down now. You know, we have a common interest. This guy didn't really care about the fact that the state oppresses me by way of my blackness. But, you know, I guess since we share a common interest about capitalism, now I'm on board. You know, that's not persuasive. That's not going to get people on board. And so there's the practical problem as well, right? The ideological problem is primary, but the practical problem also comes after it. And this is why in America, many of our socialist organizations are so incredibly white. They're incredibly white because that's what happens when you have an economically reductionist analysis, is that you're obviously that's not going to be persuasive to a group of people who daily experience the oppression by way of their race. And they recognize that fact, that white supremacy exists and it has clear effects upon their life. Coming to them and telling them, well, that's not important. We all just need to worry about class. That isn't going to unify anyone. That splits the coalition. What brings together the coalition is when there is a holistic, complete analysis of all of the problems simultaneously. Recognition that class is incredibly important and it's a unifying factor, but also a full recognition of the devastating impact of white supremacy, the devastating impact of patriarchy, the devastating impact of ableism, and so on and so on. Doing these all at the same time, that is the unifying conception. That it was what brings everyone into the same group. That is what creates the unified revolutionary constituency. That's why I'm an anarchist, because that's what anarchism is actually capable of theoretically. Now, in practice, there's some work to do, but this is the issue. This is the reason why a class reductionist analysis always falls flat. Robert Stan. Oh, okay. He's responding to something. Give me a sec. What's he responding to? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. There's just a long conversation here. I was talking for so long. Knowledge Pack says, as an ML organizer on my old college campus, I noticed that a lot of people who called themselves quote unquote anarchists opposed nominal organizing tasks such as delegating tasks, scheduling meetings, etc. The direct critique is that we should quote unquote trust people to naturally reach out to one another rather than what I assume a hierarchical organizing model. Do you have any thoughts on this? I just assumed that these people weren't even anarchists. They were just punks who didn't ever read anything ever. Yeah, no, I mean, I disagree with them completely. I'll say that. But I would also give at least some basic feedback that they're individualist anarchists. So there's two major strains of anarchism. There's social anarchism and there's individualist anarchism. There's also an overlapping category called synthesis anarchism, but we won't go into that right now. Social anarchists are like me. So like a lot of people in this chat, actually, platformism, especificismo, that's social anarchism. There's a lot of other forms. Anarcho-syndicalism, anarcho-communism is generally also a form of a social anarchism, but individualist anarchism is more like what you're encountering there. I would say they are anarchists, but you might be noticing that there is a clear distinction in the conceptions that individualist and social anarchists often have about these issues. There are a few individualist anarchists that are pro-organization, but most of them are anti-organizationalist for reasons as you stated here. So take that into consideration. You should probably consider them real anarchists, but there may be a finer distinction to take into consideration here than just the broad label anarchist. Anarchism contains a lot of small delineations, and the different kinds of anarchists make a pretty big difference to how that person is going to fit into your broader coalition. I also do need to leave here not too terribly long. Yeah, I mean, I disagree with their characterization, as a few people in the chat have said. They're wrong. Uh, they're they're incorrect, in my opinion. Delegation is not a form of hierarchy. Insofar as that, of course, representation is a form of hierarchy. If you have to elect someone to a position and then they get to make all of the decisions, that is a form of hierarchy. But if what happens is we all get together, we have a discussion, like we need to manage a garden, okay? Well, some person lives a little bit closer. That person can go there every day. Well, we delegate that person to check on it every day and to report back. That is not hierarchy. However, if we were to elect someone to tell us what to do in the garden, that is hierarchy, because now they have decision-making power and we merely carry out implementation. And I think that's the key thing here. Hierarchy takes place when a person is put into a position where they make decisions and we implement. Whereas horizontality and delegation is characterized by being a system where we all deliberate and make decisions, then we delegate a specific individual to do specific tasks and they implement the decisions of the body. So this is the characterization between representation, or a hierarchical form of authority, and horizontality and delegation. And I think this is lost on many people who call themselves anarchists these days, who, as you've now encountered, have those other opinions. Yeah, I've been rambling a lot today, so people have been saying all kinds of things while I was going off. Cafe Azul says, how do you deal with the inside and outside disengagement in the collectives you participate in? Maybe you could be a little more clear. What do you mean by disengagement? You mean people just disappearing or dropping out, or what do you mean? People not being as active, or? Arthur Sage says, have you ever watched the Black Anarchist podcast on YouTube? I don't think so. Let me go see if I can pull it up. I mean, I know at the Black Autonomy one, that's the Lorenzo Camboa Irvin one. Oh no, it's actually called Black Anarchist Podcast. Oh, okay. It's a pretty small channel. Okay, I'll follow that. Okay, I followed him. Maybe I'll listen to him sometime. People dropping out, not being active. What you have to do is you have to delegate tasks carefully. And you have to also, I think this is one of the big ones, never push yourself to your complete capacity as a group. Always stay short of your complete capacity. And the reason I say that is because you always need to take into account that 10, 20% of your current members who are active may not be active in 2 or 3 months or whatever it might be. And so what that means is you need to always be operating at 70 or 80% of your capacity, so that when those people do inevitably drop, that you don't end up in a situation where now all of you are having to do all this extra work in order to keep things going. Always fall short of your total possible capacity so that you are prepared for possible burnout. As far as calling new people in, demonstrating your concept is a very important part of it. Showing that showing what works, demonstrating, here's our process, here's how it works. This is why you should want to join us. So yeah, let's see. I don't know what's going on. I'm just people in the chat arguing with this person here. I have no idea what they're arguing about. But we are coming to the end of the live stream. Actually, today I'm kind of on one, and I'd be happy to keep on going. Unfortunately, I do have an appointment here in only about 45 minutes, so I really need to get a move on. Just want to remind everybody, if you want to support the channel, you should go over to my Patreon and become a patron for any amount, $2 all the way up to $20. Any amount will get you access to the Discord. The Discord is a great community. Highly recommend that you get access. Don't forget, when you go to Patreon, to put your Discord information in the settings. There's a good place for it somewhere. You put your Discord information, and then it auto invites you to the Discord from that. But that's the best way you can support me. I appreciate everybody who gave me super chats during this chat here. Another way you can support me is go over to Means TV. Use my affiliate code. It'll get you a little bit of a discount. I get money from everybody who uses my affiliate code, but I also get a little bit of a cut of the total revenue of the company because it is a worker cooperative. It's basically socialist Netflix. If that sounds cool, you should go over there. Seriously Wrong did a collaboration with them. Prince Shakur is on there. There's a bunch of people. But that is about it. Yeah. I appreciate you all showing up. We actually had quite a few people today. But I'm going to call it to a close, so I actually have time to get ready for that appointment. I'll see y'all next time.